Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You get more information and see previous shows also at www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield. I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Paul Bowman, a fingerstyle guitarist. And Paul, you can wave to all your friends who are watching this.
Hey everyone. To my bosses, Dean's Duets in Charlotte, Donna Nestor and April McConnell, and my fellow other wedding musicians, friends in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina and the upstate, as well as all the musicians that are trying to make it on their own. I salute you all.
Okay, well, I salute you as well. I should mention that guitarist Paul Bowman has advanced degrees in classical guitar performance from Manhattan School of Music. He also has a degree from the University of California in San Diego. His area of specialty is modern music written for classical guitar by living composers. His day job, and I like how you say that, your day job, is performing over 50 weddings a year and performing his renditions of classic rock, pop, standards, Americana, and contemporary hits at high-end restaurants in both Western North Carolina and upstate South Carolina. And so the question I asked Paul when I first meet somebody on the air for the first time is, as a kid, you grew up in Indiana, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and when you were growing up as a kid in Indiana, did you always know you wanted to be a classical guitarist?
No, I think I got caught up in the rock and roll craze. When I was 11, I started electric guitar. But my family was shocked as we sat at the kitchen table. My grandparents were in town. Everyone, my brother and sister were there. Everyone, and I announced to the world then that I was going to stop playing electric guitar and learn classical guitar. Well,
and boy, just even listening to this, that is quite a shift. You know, I also, as an 11, you were 11 or 12 years old at that point?
Yeah, I think I was about 14 at the time. I already been playing electric guitar for 3 years. I thought I did everything by then, but no, I kept playing electric as well. I had 3 semesters at the Berklee School of Music in Boston, which is a famous jazz school. Sure. So I did maintain electric guitar. I remember going home once with a classical guitar, a jazz guitar, and I also played the Renaissance lute. I remember that one semester I went home for Thanksgiving from Berklee, and I had to bring all 3 instruments because that's what I was practicing and learning at the time.
Well, before you did that, so you started playing at a certain age. Were you in any bands or rock bands as a kid?
We did rock bands, but my high school had a real strong jazz band, and that's where I really learned, excelled to play in an ensemble setting. And we had wonderful faculty at my high school in Chesterton, Indiana, and lucky to have even a very advanced music theory class as a senior. And so I think I had a good foundation. It's just for the classical guitar, I couldn't find it in Indiana, so I took lessons in Chicago. Funny, with a gentleman named Richard Pick, who didn't play with picks. He played guitar with classical style, but his name was Richard Pick. He's a very famous pedagogue, by the way. And he was a typical Chicagoan. He would draw a picture of the right hand, and he called the right hand thumb the boss.
Okay.
So
so what got you into classical music, though?
I think there were rock bands that experimented with in the classical realm, bands like Yes and Genesis and Pink Floyd and King Crimson and all kinds of those bands that sort of blurred the lines between the styles, and it got me to saying, wow, there's other music out there besides rock. And so, but for guitar, no, we have limited repertoire, mostly 19th century, and you have to get into the 20th century for some interesting music. You know, most of all the 19th century stuff is relegated as salon music, kind of fluff for the guitar, which wasn't taken very seriously until Andre Segovia
Sure.
brought it on the concert stage in the early to mid 20th century.
Now, when you played, so when you play a classical guitar, do you play that at weddings also, or?
It's a funny trend. I've been playing weddings over 30 years. And of course, for the processional, the recessional, there still is today a reliance on classical music, you know, trumpet voluntary, canon in T in D by Paco Bell and so on. Johann Sebastian Bach's Jesu Joy Man's Desiring and these sort of pieces. Sometimes they're asked, but mostly the trend has turned to pop. And so one of my wedding contractors who hires me out, we mostly only do pop. Again, maybe sometimes for the wedding ceremony parts like the recessional, there might be a party that might want, usually the bride might want canon in D.
Sure.
That's sort of still the most popular choice for the wedding processional.
The nice thing about hiring you, for example, for a wedding is you can go, I guess, many different directions, however the bride or groom want.
Oh, absolutely. I being classically trained is not only I get to play that repertoire, but my contractor, she sends us complete music scores. Usually they're piano reductions. So I take from the piano and I read the notes right off the piano score. That's again advantage of my musical training and experience is being able to read on, you know, in both clefs, treble and bass clef, which is the piano, you know, left and right hand. And you have to be that flexible and good these days because my fingers are in a lot of pots trying to make a living.
Do you have a particular music style you like to play?
Well, I mean, again, I mean, I look, you know, my joy, greatest joy in my career in life was when I was in the ivory tower, especially at University of San Diego, University of California, San Diego. I was an RA, research assistant, that was getting paid to play grad student compositions that were written for me or written with me in mind. And I was recruited for that school specifically for my ensemble playing, being able to play with other instruments, and being guitar players have trouble sometimes with rhythm, a
Right.
lot of times with rhythm, trying to play with groups and playing with a conductor too. It's kind of, you were not used to that because we're soloists, don't you know, and we just look at our guitar, we don't look at anything else.
Any guitarists, Monday guitarists that you admire or some of your favorites?
Oh, absolutely. I studied with Sharon Isbin. She's done tremendous things. And at my school, we had the triumvirate of Manuel Barreco, Carlos Barbosa Lima, and Sharon Isbin. They were there for the time I was there at Manhattan School of Music. And it was the greatest experience of my life in terms of the resources for learning classical guitar. Well, let me tell you, playing a jury during one of your grading periods in front of these three people, you know, that uh, we were popping a lot of beta blockers back then.
Let me ask you this in terms of becoming a guitar player, I guess any musician. Even nowadays, do you still practice?
I had 5 jobs Thursday to Sunday, and I still practice 3 hours today. No, Blaine, it's absolutely necessary, especially pieces I'm working on the side for my own benefit. As you can tell, my extensive YouTube collection, I may just start recording something in my apartment in Landrum, South Carolina. I just might start recording anything any minute. So I generally work during for instance, during the pandemic, I worked mostly on guitar studies and etudes and estudios for the guitar that address certain technical aspects of the instrument, and that's what I did mostly during the pandemic. I had some jobs. Luckily, my wedding contractor, she she ran a special. It was an elopement special where we would play elopement ceremonies. Just a small family. That's it. Social distance is involved in masking and that. I mean, I survived and we did lots of those. And then we got booked in the following year because that's when they would invite their friends and family for the reception a year later. So there were many jobs where I played the elopement ceremony and then played the reception a year later.
When you were during the pandemic, I'm just curious, did anybody ever did you have any Zoom jobs that
Yes, there were, that's very interesting. Yes, I did a couple performances. There were some ensembles that were being formed in Europe and on the East Coast where they needed really good classical guitarists, and we'd all play in an ensemble. Of course, we had to get again really high end internet. I don't get that at Landrum. I'm in my girlfriend's place right now because she's got this really good internet. But for me, I'm living next to two donkeys and a horse, so we don't have internet there
you see
much anyway.
but now it's exciting. So now you're back to performing and talk a little bit, if you would, Paul. So your performances, you mentioned 50 weddings you do a year.
Yeah, I do with the mostly Dean's duets, but I do plenty of solo weddings where people sometimes find me. There are these booking gigs that you could pay money and join, but I never pay money. There's one that's called Gig
Right.
Salad,
I'm familiar
and
with that.
I get calls left and right, and I never paid a dime for any membership there. So doing something right and living right, I guess. But no, I'm with Dean's Duets. They're a firm out of Charlotte, and I've done weddings far flung from the Duke Mansion in Charlotte to the YMCA, that beautiful chapel there in the mountains. I mean, I've done some really remote wedding gigs. I have a battery powered amplifier because you won't find electricity up there. And I slip up the mountaintops. I've been in some of the most beautiful venues for weddings you can imagine. And it's inspiring, but it's exhausting to get to. And the logistics are always the most important aspect of the wedding. But remember this, Blaine, weddings are the only occasions where people don't give a darn how much it costs.
It's nice.
Whatever it takes, honey, for their daughters to get the music they want.
Well, you
And
also
that's why I
mentioned
do them. I can't possibly make this doing a day job, doing anything, but the weddings, and also I have a rental property that I own that I have get rental income. That's the only way I think most people that play live have day jobs, really, believe it or not. I think Jason Cristofario is the only one maybe that's a full-time musician, but he teaches a couple places, so he has an income teaching, but he plays 20 gigs a week, it seems, Jason. So but in any case, we Dean's, I usually play with violin duo, but this weekend we'll be at Haiku I Do on Saturday, this in Asheville. It's a wedding venue called Haiku I Do.
Do you have
And we'll
preference?
be with violin and keyboard trio. So guitar, violin, keyboard. And we meet about an hour before the gig, and we all get our PDFs in our iPads that we're playing, and we just rehearse. But mostly it's music we've all done a lot before with Dean's. So
Do you have a
it's
preference, Paul, in terms of performing? Do you have a preference being by yourself or with others?
I guess by myself, because when I play my background music gigs at nice restaurants, I get to pick some really fine arrangements of fingerstyle guitar music, everything from Beatles to James Taylor to Coldplay to Maroon 5 to Ed Sheeran to Billy Joel, Paul Simon. I play it all, and I play Gershwin, Cole Porter as well, Broadway things, Americana. I have some great Americana arrangements. Our folk music, out here that most people would know. So when I play a job, the fun part of the fun of people is because it's instrumentals. They have to guess the title, and mostly, it's a competition at the table who can guess the song, and or they'll sing the lyrics to themselves. So it's not being sped foon like a singer-songwriter would just give you the words, and it's so distracting. But instrumental classical guitar, fingerstyle guitar, you can tune it in or you can tune it out. You could have a nice conversation, or you could be fully engaged at the table with your guests and guess what the song is. And I'm fully convinced that what I did was the perfect entertainment during COVID, because I'm not singing and spreading my germs through my. But it was funny. In some places, they would put a big plexiglass between
Right.
the performer and the audiences, so the singer would have to just sing right in the plexiglass. That was funny
Well,
during.
in terms of your background, so do you ever sing at all?
No, I'm not a singer. But I think I missed my calling. I have an amazing tenor voice. If I really ever was trained as an opera singer, I think I would have been world famous, world class. I can pop high D's and E flats out like
How
a.
about in terms of what else you do? Do you do any writing of music?
Oh, that's an interesting point. No, I there's just so much amazing repertoire, and repertoire that needs to be written. One of my specialties when I'm doing my classical guitar work is going to universities and music conservatories and getting grad students to write for guitar. So I present programs of guitar music, and I meet with the composers to help them to point the way to writing for the instrument. Is a lot of them, they get to train in the orchestral instruments, but some of the solo instruments like guitar, there's not very many manuals on writing for the. There's more now, certainly, but when I was at Manhattan School in the late 80s, it wasn't too much material on how to write for guitars. But now it's great in meeting and getting their works written for me. And it's sort of quid pro quo. If you get with some professors and learn their pieces, you say, I'll learn your piece and play it over here if you get me to your institution and let me play the piece at your school. So that's how I usually get bookings, is through working with various composers on the faculties of the school, and try to get students to write, and then maybe come back a year later with the fruits of the labor working with the students. And so I've done that on a number of occasions.
Aside from those gigs, have you done other teaching?
Yeah, teaching. Uh, my degree from University of California, San Diego, is in contemporary performance, and it's not a guitar major. So I never got the doctorate from a muscular classical guitar program, like Florida State, Texas, these other schools. That send theirs, and they always get the jobs. There might be one or two jobs a year posted on the College Music Society newsletter, and you'll get many hundreds of applicants. My training, was solving my own problems. When I was at UC San Diego, I would bring my pieces to different faculty. Like I had Mark Dresser, the double bass professor, was a private teacher of mine for a quarter. John Fonville, who was the flute professor, was my private teacher, where I bring my solo pieces for a quarter. But my main person that I really attached to and that was my mentor was Harvey Solberger. And Harvey, he's retired, been retired a number of years, but when I was at UC San Diego, Harvey and I worked quite a lot. We toured Italy. We played at Columbia University in New York. We did all kinds of really great things. And again, as far as teaching, uh, I don't have I'm not part of the clique in terms of the right school that I went to for that. But any program that would want a great guitar teacher that can teach music theory and that can teach that could coach ensembles on modern music of all instruments, I certainly can do that, and I can conduct as well. I'm very good at conducting modern works. I have conducted in the past. I haven't, during the pandemic, things closed down for us. Things have gotten slowly. A year ago, I did a international guitar festival at Ball State University in Indiana. And that's the last thing I've done, the only thing coming out of the pandemic. So I'm sort of relying on my day job now,
Let's
which
too
is
bad because as you're talking, I could just see you doing like a Jack Black thing. Was it School for Rock or Rocks?
yeah, it's cool for
I
but
guess
the problem with the guitar is that it's two different instruments. If you're a violinist as a kid, you
right.
start the classical method. If you're a pianist and you're a kid, you start the classical method. If you're a guitarist, well, no, I don't want to do the class. I want to play right away, instant gratification, and with a pick. These are large motor muscles that are just simple, but when you get the fine motoric, fine muscles, and learn how to pluck and learn polyphony, to learn how to play music as a band, as an orchestra, you learn how to classical guitar, you learn the melody, the rhythm, and the harmony. And that's what I do. My arrangements when I play fingerstyle guitar at fine restaurants, I play like orchestral or band versions, whole versions of the melody, the rhythm, and the harmony, all together working great. The Beatles work great on fingerstyle guitar.
Well,
And
Paul,
so does Jerry Jeff Walker.
and the segue, we're
Mr.
going to try
Bojangles.
something here if we can, Paul. So I
Yeah.
understand you have a YouTube video, and if we get lucky, we're going to be able to play for folks. But why don't you introduce it? Then I'll pause and try to get it running. But
This
talk
is
a little
a
bit about the video.
famous arrangement of Mr. Bojangles, Jerry Jeff Walker, who was a writer, singer-songwriter, passed I think a year or two ago. And this is Chet Atkins' arrangement. So Chet, it's got a lot of fluff and things, but this is finger style guitar pure in terms of the pyroglyphics that I have to do on the guitar to make it
And let
work.
me have you hold just a second. I'm going to
All
pause
right.
this, see if I can find the clip, because I think
All
it's
right.
really worth seeing and listening to. So,
All right.
Paul, I'll be right back with you. Don't go anywhere.
Yes.
Okay, and we're back with Paul Bowman. We tried a little experiment, didn't quite work. It's a shame because his music is so good. Paul, why don't you tell folks if they want to listen to some of your recordings, and there are a whole bunch of them, you have a YouTube channel, is that correct?
Yeah, yes, it's youtube.com/user/P Bowman 5, the number 5 at the end. So P Bowman, PBOWMAN 5.
I always like when people do that. That distinguishes you between P Bowman 4 and P Bowman 6. Is
I didn't know that.
no, I don't know. I'm
No,
wondering.
5 is just a lucky number that I love. I always use 5 for
And I want to encourage people. And Paul, what I'll do, I'll also put this in the description of the show as well, so people can see it and read it, because it's fun talking to Paul Bowman, but it's even more fun to see his YouTubes and to listen to his music. How many YouTube clips do you have there?
I have no idea. I imagine it's over 60 or 70. I have a 12 CD box set that unfortunately some of the pieces are published on different labels, but the way the recording industry has collapsed and the way that some companies aren't in business and are out of print and you can't find recordings. Well, I have my own box set, but it's 12 CDs of stuff I've done before I was at UC San Diego and then during UC San Diego. Another reason I can't sell the recordings from UC San Diego, because I think the first day I was there, they made me sign a waiver not to anything that's recorded at our premise, you're not allowed to monetize. So but that's okay. I'm not making money anyway on YouTube, so I'll just put it on. And but everything on there is from my solo works. There's some big Bach pieces there. There's mostly though modern music from the giants of the late 20th century, early 21st century. I've recorded every major composer that's written for guitar. Especially on my box set, but I eventually let them out on YouTube when I feel like it. I could let more on, maybe I will. But and I've recorded live at my restaurants where I play when there's less of a crowd, when I think I'll get a good recording. And so I put those on, and also in my apartment in Landrum, there's a lot of them. As I said, when I was during the pandemic, I worked on etudes and studies for the classical guitar, and you can hear all 20 of the estudio of Fernando Sor, great 19th century Spanish guitar master composer. And these 20 studies were gathered by Andres Segovia, and they've been one of the great pedagogic pieces for our literature of all time. So I've put everything on there, and some avant-garde things from my solo recordings, and some really nice flute and guitar works as well.
If you would just repeat that YouTube address, because if folks want to listen to some of the music we're talking about,
Oh yeah,
best bet to go is the YouTube channel. What's that?
it's youtube.com/user/pbowman5.
Okay, and you'll see a very impressive range of stuff from Paul. Let me ask you this, Paul. Also, if people want to find out more about you or get information about you or where you're playing at, that kind of stuff, is there another website, Facebook page, some other place they can
Yeah,
track you down?
they could check out my Facebook. I have two profiles on Facebook. One is for my international classical music contacts, and I don't use that one lately, as I said, since the pandemic. Before, haven't been doing so many classical tours and concerts. But my normal one that's from the locals here, where I advertise my local shows and gigs, is Paul Fingerstyle Bowman.
Okay,
So
and you mentioned
the
that.
moniker Fingerstyle is just to differentiate from classical, though I am classically trained. I don't want to confuse people. If they say, they'll go to my YouTube site and they'll listen to some avant-garde thing, or they'll go and see my Facebook, and I might post some avant-garde thing, and they'll think, well, I'm not going to a restaurant to hear this. But no, I mean, again, my day job, I'm able to have the technique from playing these hard modern works to attain technique. When I play my restaurants, usually a 2 or 3 hour job, I play straight through. They hate me because I don't take a break, or at least other musicians hate me. What do you mean you don't take a break?
And,
I just play 3 hours straight through.
and talk
And
about restaurant gigs. So describe
oh
what happens there and where do you play?
yeah, I'll be this Friday the 12th at Stone Soup, which is a place in Landrum, South Carolina. That'll be from 6 to 8. And let's see, the 19th of May, I'll be at Azalea Bistro, which is in beautiful historic downtown Saluda,
Okay.
North Carolina. And on the 23rd, I'll be at a place, it's a Tuesday, on the 23rd, a place called Micah's, which is in Sapphire, North Carolina, beautiful area of the country. And it's a nice, easygoing restaurant. And I'll be back at Azalea Bistro on the 26th of Friday. My Saturdays are all taken with weddings in May. As I said, I've got a gig this Saturday at Haiku I Do in
I'm not familiar
Nashville.
with it. Let me ask you, do you have a preference, wedding or a restaurant gig?
Well, I mean, depends on what my bank account is telling me at the time. The weddings pay much better,
Sure.
but there's sometimes you're playing at a restaurant and okay, I count on the tips and I'll get like twice the amount that the fee is that I get from the restaurant in just tips. And so it's really gratifying in that area. But now my weddings, people are starting to give us tips too. So I don't know. It's like six one half dozen the other. No, the solo things I get to stretch out and do some really great fingerstyle arrangements of pop contemporary hits and Americana standards, Gershwin, Cole Porter, Broadway, all kinds of things.
I don't know
Everything.
if you ever saw this idea, but I thought it's a good one that some restaurants, not so much I would say in North Carolina, but elsewhere, actually put a music tip on the bill. Have you ever seen that?
I think that's a great idea. I think they should be, per table,
Right, something like
a,
that.
a fee that, but I don't think it's again, I've had restaurant owners go say you can't force someone to tip,
Right.
and I would rather have it come from the heart and from their own initiative, but hey, more power to it. If we can get that done, I'm all for it.
Well, but it's analogous when you think about it to a cover charge. Some places used to
Oh
have
yeah,
cover
someplace.
charge.
Yeah, I think it depends on the artist. I'm not seeking fame and notoriety so much when I do my restaurant jobs because that's my day job, Blaine. And I'm not looking for fame. That's why it doesn't bother me the ego if you're talking while I'm playing, and you're not clapping it and you're not clapping after I'm done with my song. What? No, it doesn't. I don't have an ego in that way. The challenge is playing a classical concert in front of a crowd of other classical guitar majors and professionals. That's where you're sweating bullets.
What's the largest crowd you ever played before?
Hmm. I lived in Germany for 11 years and I played, interestingly enough, in a Brazilian band, and we didn't have a single native from Brazil, but we played really great. It was a great ensemble, and we did this festival in Germany somewhere. I swear there must have been 10,000 people. It
Wow.
was, it was major time, and again, it just was a group I was subbing in for, and I get to play. Turns out that's why you can never expect things to go the way you really want to. You get to go with the flow in this business because, again, there's been nights I'll play at the restaurant and never played finer, and I'll get $1.50 in a tip. And then there's other times when I play just average and I'm just going through the motion. I'll look through it. There'll be $100 bill, $50 bill. Well, it depends where I'm playing. This Sunday, Mother's Day, I'll be at Kenmore Country Club in Flat Rock. That's where the folks will give me the $100 tips.
And that you'll be by yourself?
Yeah, that'll be a solo gig, Mother's Day celebration at Kenmore, which I've played there. Again, you develop these relationships, and I've played at Kenmore for a number of years. I guess there's only one place, one place in Asheville where I never got chased off a gig before. I never was fired on the spot. But there's one guy who owns Ice's
Oh, sure.
restaurant, and they're downtown, and also Hemingway is on the roof of their
Sure.
building. I was playing in Ice's, the French bistro, and the owner was there, and he had to call the manager who was managing up in Hemingway, and she had to call the manager who was managing down at ISIS to tell me to stop because the boss said we got a new speaker system. We're going to play only music from the can. We're never going to have live music. So they stopped. I think I think they had some live music sometimes up at Hemingway, but they don't have it at Isa's
But
French Bistro anymore.
by the way, you may have heard ICE closed.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, that's why.
about a year ago, because maybe about a year ago they just closed.
Oh.
To wrap up, Paul, let me just ask you again. So if folks want to keep tabs of you, I think we've talked about the two best bets. The YouTube channel is again what?
It's youtube.com/user/pbowman5. And my Facebook is Paul Fingerstyle Bowman, Bowman. And there I publish, it's a public post, all my gigs where I'm playing, and you can come hear me.
Is your music also there too?
Yes, I'll put music on my Facebook, but warning, I usually try to put the most impressive things, which tend to be my experimental, far out modern music, avant-garde things. And don't be afraid, just trust that I could play your Beatles and Paul Simon and James Taylor just as well.
Okay. Well, anyway, look forward to digging some of it up and sometime actually meeting in person. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'd like to thank you for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World podcast. Also, thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. And again, I apologize for not being able to show the tapes, but we'll reference them in the description. I think it's definitely worth people to take a look at it because I think you'll be surprised. So thanks, Paul, for being my guest.
Thanks you for having me, Blaine.